Hey viewers, Purple Celery here. Welcome back to my channel. So here we are at the grand finale of Doctor Who Flux. And today I'm going to be reviewing Chapter 6, The Vanquishers. So the big question is, does Doctor Who Flux stick the landing? Because let's face it, there were lots of loose ends at the end of last episode to tidy up. We had the Doctor with Swarm and Azure. We also had the Grand Serpent and the Sontarans invading Earth. We also had Dan, Yaz and the Professor in the tunnels in 1904. Then of course we had Bell and Carvanista up in space, and Vinda and Di trapped inside Passenger. So again with the Vanquishers, we had an episode that was very busy, very fast, very frenetic. Personally, I thought it was a bit too overloaded. And this showed, for example, in several scenes where lots of the characters were just kind of running around like headless chooks. It also showed in the garbled explanations. For example, there were two scenes in this episode where the Doctor was almost like running through a checklist of what she had to do. She was like, we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to save this person, we have to save that person. It also showed in the way that some characters essentially stood around with not much to do. Yasmin Khan, I am looking at you. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy how many of the plot threads all came together. For example, I enjoyed how we found out that essentially the Flux was being used by Swarm and Azure to get their revenge on the Doctor. And then it was also kind of piggybacked upon by the Grand Serpent and the Sontarans, who saw the opportunity to vanquish their foes. Incidentally, I was impressed by that. That was actually a pretty smart move. I did think that the Daleks and the Cybermen were a little bit silly and naive just to walk straight into the trap, but you know, overall, yeah, it was a smart move by the GS and his Sontarans. Ultimately though, I found there were chunks of this episode that were a little bit hard to keep up with. Even visually, there were some scenes that were a little bit confusing. I mean, don't get me wrong, the special effects overall were top notch, but there were a few scenes where I found it hard to figure out what was going on with the Lupari shield wall and who was meant to be on what side of it. I also have several questions. For example, how did the Grand Serpent find out about the Flux? And what was his ultimate goal? Was he just another exiled dictator looking for a new planet to rule over? That was never quite fully explained. Also, I didn't quite get how time can be personified, because ultimately it's an abstract concept. And finally, what was going on with the house that Swarm and Azure were showing the Doctor? Like, was that literal or a metaphor? Like, I think it's a metaphor, but I'm not 100% sure. Don't get me wrong, there were several scenes in this episode that I liked a lot. For example, the Sontarans overall were great. I really enjoyed the scene inside the, what do you call it, corner shop? Off license, that's what they call it in the UK. Where the Sontaran was sort of like, you know, hoeing into all the chocolates and the fizzy drinks and everything, and like the Doctor and the companions and the others just come along and basically bribe him with even more sugary goodness, and he just goes, yeah, why not, you know, bring it on, I'll do whatever you want, just, you know, give me the chocolate. I also love the scenes with Carvanista. My heart broke for him in this episode because it became apparent that he was once a close companion of the Doctor's, and she's completely forgotten about him and their time together. And worst of all, he can't tell her about it because he's got that thing inside his head which will essentially kill him if he does. And then of course the rest of his people were basically wiped out by the Sontarans. So yeah, you know, I really felt for poor Carvanista in this episode. My heart broke for him. I also liked the Doctor and Yaz together in this episode. I haven't until now been much of like a, you know, Thasman shipper, whatever you call it, but gosh, I have to say that the way that the Doctor spoke to Yaz at the end about how she felt bad about not letting Yaz in and how she was going to start letting Yaz in future. I mean, yeah, to me that was not how a Doctor speaks to their companions. That's more of how a girlfriend speaks to her girlfriend. So yeah, I might be jumping on board here. I also found it intriguing how the Doctor chose to hide the fob watch containing her memories deep inside the TARDIS. my theory is that she did that because she basically doesn't want to know who she was in the past. She might be a little bit scared of what she'll find if she opens that fob watch, especially if it turns out that if during her time in division she did some not so savoury things. I can imagine the doctor not wanting to know about, you know, any bad stuff that she did in a previous life. So I guess the big question is, you know, will that fob watch ever be retrieved from the TARDIS? Then of course we had the big hint that there is a regeneration coming and that the Master might be responsible for it. So yeah, let's watch this space. So I am going to do another video doing an overall look at the entire Flux series, possibly this coming weekend. So please keep an eye out for that. It also looks like we're getting a New Year's Day special, which is great. So of course I'll be reviewing that when it comes out. I just want to say in the meantime, thank you so much for your support. I've received a lot of fantastic, insightful comments, which I love reading. I've gained a few new subscribers, so thank you very much for joining up. Once again, I would love to hear your thoughts about this episode, so please leave your comments in the comment section below. Give this a like if you've enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already. I would personally give this episode probably 6 out of 10. It didn't quite do it for me. I just felt overall there was a little bit too much going on. But, you know, your mileage may vary, so, you know, don't be afraid to come out and say it. Anyway, I just want to say again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see everybody next time.